Hello and welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I'm your host this evening, Hedliner, and I'm here with my guests, Matterall,
Hello.
Baleful Discernia,
Good day.
and Elise Randolph and MacCloud.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Hedliner.
Hey guys.
That was terrific.
We've got a great show this evening. Matterall is going to tell you all about it because I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'll hand over to him now.
All right. Thanks, Hedliner from Pandemic Legion, the fleet commander for some of the invading forces of Pappy. Good to have you hosting.
Oh, you're welcome. It's the least I can do.
Yeah. And I like how you stick with messing up names and the great tradition of Baleful Dysnomia's name. So good job. All right. Today, Hedliner is going to take us through some of the great stuff that's happening in the war in Delve. Looks like there are a couple of towers that are going to be sieged today. We'll talk about that. And we'll review the scope, war events, the iHubs that have been taken over in Delve. And we'll look at the EVE Pulse even and talk about the November update that's coming up. The VAT out of hell, the dynamic bounty system, the encounter surveillance system, and we'll also discuss Elise, EVE Open Alliance or Alliance Open.
Yeah, the EVE Alliance Open, I guess the cultural successor, you could call it, to the Alliance Tournament, will be held next weekend. Yesterday, there was actually a neat little showcase match between EVE and CCP, like a 10v10 best of 5. Wildly hilarious, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Awesome. All right. Well, first, let's go to the scope and check in on the war in Delve. CCP made a scope video. We'll take a look at it now and come back and talk about what happened and what's next.
The war in the Delve region continues. After 4 failed attempts, Pappy forces finally achieved the strategic goal of building a Keepstar in the Imperium home region. Each attempt to gain this foothold sparked massive battles, which lasted for hours as both sides committed thousands of ships to the fray. The combined losses number in the hundreds for supercapitals and in the thousands for subcapital ships. The loss of life among ship crew during the past weeks is simply staggering. Now that Pappy have established a fully operational Keepstar within Delve, they have brought the war into the Imperium heartland. The Keepstar is being used for staging and stockpiling, allowing Pappy to conduct large-scale fleet operations, extending their striking capability to around 90% of all the systems within the region. The Imperium remains defiant and confident in its efforts to push the invaders out of Delve. Joining them in this struggle are their old allies, the Red Alliance. This effectively resurrects the old Red Swarm Federation of the Second Great War from more than 10 years ago. Speaking for the Imperium, Brisk Rubel made the following statement. After 4 months, Test and their meat shields have finally committed to actually starting this war, bringing the fight to Delve. We remain committed to defending our space and making these invaders pay for every atrocity committed in our home region of Delve. Pappy representative Ron USMC had only one message for the Imperium: fight or die. The Imperium has in recent years built up formidable defenses by constructing a large number of citadels across the region. And if history has shown us anything, it's that the Imperium are some of the most tenacious and capable capsuleers in all of New Eden. And in light of this recent development, the war is likely far from over. The Empire's...
That one leak.
Oh, welcome back. All right, we only saw half that 10-minute video because it goes into Triglavians for a while. So we'll pause that and maybe pick that up a little bit later. But we wanted to talk about the war, give an update on how it's going. And so Hedliner, let's start with you. Can you tell us, first of all, let's look at that video. That's the video where the Keepstar was actually successfully dropped. We haven't heard from you in a while. So do you want to take us back there and tell us what your adventures have been like?
Sure. So for us, it's been a roller coaster ride. We've had I guess from a pandemic legion and reckless contingency point of view, because we kind of come as a double act now, we've had the best time. It's been non-stop forming up, going out, bridging out of the staging, fighting people, dropping people, escalating with capitals. It's been brilliant. It's been the kind of it's been what nullsec players have dreamed of for years and years and years. And I've been fighting in and around nullsec for the last 15 years, and I've never experienced anything like this. It's been absolutely awesome. I haven't relished finishing my working day, not coming home anymore, but logging off work, logging into Eve, running fleets from 1700 Eve time through to 0100 Eve time, non-stop for many, many years. It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it.
It's delivering, huh? This war is delivering.
Absolutely. And, the Imperium say we're in month 5 or whatever now, and we haven't made huge progress or inroads or whatever here and there. Like, it's been like our members are so amped up and hyped for it, every day just wanting to go out, form up, fight, engage the enemy, take ground where we can. I haven't experienced anything like it in many, many years. It's been incredible.
How about you, Elise? Are you able to participate as much as you want, or?
I'm there for whenever Hedliner rings the bell really loudly, and he's like, "Yo, we really need extra people." I'm there. I try and show up in US time zone as well, because I'm kind of sucked with busy work stuff during the week. But yeah, I show up to the big ones whenever Hedliner calls me. Yeah. And some of the smaller ones, a lot of the more fun fights that Hedliner is talking about, it's just like flash forming to try and kill a roaming gang that's going through, or some Solve Toaster stuff, or just an iHub defense, or even just a tiny citadel that's going down somewhere. It's quite enjoyable, and his characterization of this war being very different from a lot of other ones is completely accurate, right? A lot of the time you just have big timers that you show up for, and then just a lull between. But it seems like there is no lull between. There's always something going on.
As a third party who shows up in U.S. time zone to roam and shoot everybody, it really does feel like a war zone. The other night we went to Delve via a whole from Thera to Iridia. First jump, one tack smeb from Socked, and we fought Nullsec Neo Shulpan. We fought a gang that was bashing a Faralux, and it was some of the best just random roaming fights that I had for quite some time, because it was just another small gang that was bashing a Faralux, and we got to fight with them, and then we got the horror on the Faralux, and then we moved on, and we killed some horde toasters and got killed by a giant fraternity fleet or something, and then got killed by a goon fleet. And it actually just does feel like a war zone, and it's really fun to roam as a third party too. So the first couple months of the war, I was kind of joking about if we'd go to Quirius or something and there'd just be nothing, and so this is the Great War. But right now it really, really does feel like a war zone.
So it's heated up.
Yeah.
So a couple of things have happened since we've talked to you, Hedliner, and I want your opinion on this. Let's take you back to, is it FC9 or F9Z? I can't remember.
YZ9.
YZ9, yes. So that is where the Keepstar was put down that you just saw in the scope video. That happened after a fight before it where a Fortizar was taken out. If you remember that fight, it was the biggest fight Eve has seen. And it was also one of the bloodiest at 2.5 trillion. You were in that. Your PL supers were surrounded by Titans, and it looked like it was going to be a boson trap that might have wiped out quite a bit. Can you take us back to that moment if you remember it?
Yeah, I was actually watching the Talking Station stream at the time, and I think your words were, "PL looks like they're in some trouble here." But things happen so slowly in those kind of fights. It was a case of just okay, look, we've jumped in here, we're loading now, these guys are doing this, let's see how it shakes out. Don't draw any conclusions just yet. We'll see what happens, because we know that you should never say never when you're in that much tie-dye with that many people on grid. You just don't know what's going to happen, and we've seen that for years and years and years now. Like, things hang in the balance of how the server performs and stuff like that. What I would say is that YZ9 fight that you're talking about on the Fortizar was really good, actually, really good fun. And if you look at, there was a great video made by a guy in Reckless Contingency, which kind of documented every phase of it, from the initial insertion onto the grid through the various escalation stages right up to the end of the fight, including the bosun trap, which kind of documents it really neatly. And that's well worth a watch. But that kind of summed it up quite accurately, I think, which is kind of like, we started off thinking we had the upper hand. We engaged fairly aggressively. They escalated. It looked like something was up. We bit down on the hook that they put in the water. They executed a trap fairly well. And it didn't work for various reasons. And then we recovered from the initial kind of phases of the surprise of that happening, and capitalized on what became actually a really good victory, and set us up for killing that Fortizar. And then that laid the foundations and was the driving force behind dropping the Keepstar the next day or the day after to put us where we are now. So yeah, it was really interesting, and like, I haven't seen anything that creative for a while in nullsec set piece battles. It was really interesting to watch and play through. Part of me feels bad for them for it kind of not shaking out the way they thought it was going to, but also we benefited from it, so
you can't feel that bad.
Yeah, I don't feel that bad.
What would have happened if it worked?
We would have endeavored to replace the ships that we lost and carried on fighting the war, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. So you don't think that was a knockout blow?
No, I think it would. Had it worked the way they envisaged it working, it probably would have been pretty painful, but I don't think it would have been a knockout blow. No.
Okay, they would have made it. So that allowed you then, actually it was probably in reaction to that fight, you guys put down a Keepstar right away, and you guys bubbled it up. Are you familiar with what happened there?
Yeah, in as much insofar as that some bubbles were placed to stop them warping in at specific ranges. I know they had some grievances about not loading the grid or anything, but I'd point out that we bridged many hundreds of people to the same grid and loaded just fine. So not entirely sure what the upset was about that, but it was one of many things that we talked about. Unconventional tactics for anchoring and defending a Keepstar that we wanted to place.
Yeah, that was a very interesting move as well. Once you guys put down the Keepstar, so this is a few weeks ago, you put down that Keepstar, and that's like you entering the door. So now you guys are in, you 500-pound gorillas are in the room with Delve. And what happens after that? Now you have strike distance.
We've done a lot of work clearing out a couple of constellations directly adjacent to YZ9 and NPC Delve. Those iHubs have all been destroyed. We've killed a bunch of structures underneath those iHubs as well, mainly Sotios, Zataras, and Fortizars. And we've continued to push through the middle of Delve. This weekend, we cleared out the constellation that NOL-M9 is in as well.
It's a classic station, right?
Yeah, we've cracked that one wide open as well. And we're just going constellation to constellation at the moment. I know they've their fireside yesterday. They have initiated a new defensive plan called like Helm's Deep Plan or something, where they're going to move some of their capitals to E30I to a Keepstar on the gate and try and kind of lock down that series of dead end constellations, which they think that we won't be able to kind of push through that way for fear of not being able to get back out again. We'll see how that works, but they haven't seeded 1DQ or anything like that. So there's a lot to play for still. We're just kind of pushing forwards from the direction that we're staging in right now. And we'll see where we get to. I mean, I don't think this war's over by any stretch, even if some of the decisions they're making are not sort of what we would have expected right now.
Yeah. So you said that morale's high. You're having a great time. You've been playing this game for a long time. These battles are pitch battles. This war is delivering. How is the attitude of your guys?
They love it. I mean, I don't remember a time in recent years where we had as many people just raring to go every prime time that rolls around. And keep in mind, I speak on behalf of what is generally considered to be a dead alliance. Like, we have hundreds of people ready and raring to go every day, which is great for me. It means we ping a fleet, we put it up, we get people in, and they're ready to go. They know what they have to do. They have all the right ships. They're organized. They have a good attitude. They stick with it. They have great endurance. We go out and we have some of our fleets are 3, 4, 5 hours long on a weeknight as well, and they stick with it. We don't have people who log off or quit halfway through. They stick with it till the end generally, unless they have absolute emergencies, and then we do stuff to get them to a safe place where they can log off. And they just stick with it because this is something people have wanted to do for such a long time. They've wanted to assault Delve. They wanted to take the fight to the Goons, the Imperium, what has been perceived to be the strongest player-made organization in recent times in EVE. And there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm behind taking that fight to them on their turf. And we're thriving off that. Like, us, NC, Horde in particular as well, they have such a zest for waging war against these people. And it just shows no signs of waning or going away either.
Yeah, to put things in perspective, right? When you're talking about these like this level of combat happens relatively infrequently in EVE, and generally around month 3, 4, which is probably where we're at now, give or take. You see members like enthusiasm going down a little bit, fewer people joining fleets. You see the numbers dwindling because you're like, well, if it's not like one of the big fights and all this other stuff is just like a useless grind, nothing, no actions happening. Stuff like that. Like, that's historically what happens in these like server side battles, I guess you can call them, or server side conflicts. But this has been a complete opposite, even a 180 from the First World War B, right? Pretty much partially way through that one, the writing was on the wall. They're like, oh, well, it looks like Goons are going to have to seed here. And people started dripping down, getting a little bit uninterested, blah, blah, blah. But this, like, as Hedliner said, every day is a is a new adventure, so to speak, because there's something happening at all scales, like 5-man, 50-man, 100-man, 200-man, 500-man. Like, every single day has a new type of content.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of people as well, like a lot of people that we lost over the years. Like, you see this in many different alliances, but we've noticed it as well. Like, people come back with the allure of fighting this great war, and then it's not just they realize they came back on the notion of fighting Goons or the Imperium or whatever, but then they come back, they join the fleets, and they actually enjoy the fleets that we run. Like, they're decently run fleets. They enjoy the kind of fighting that we're doing, and they're like, actually, they fall back in love with the game and fighting in nullsec and stuff like that. And people that we've seen who haven't been in the game for 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer, who come back and they like dive in feet first, and that's great to see as well. And I know that's happening on the other side as well, but something that maybe isn't as well covered is that it happens with us as well. And people just, I think there's just a great sense of enjoyment and enthusiasm for fighting in nullsec, which hasn't been seen for a long time, because you've had quite formulaic wars in recent years. You look at what happened with the North versus the GOTG, and it was just a typical time zone war. But here it's not. It's more of a war of attrition, which is what everyone has wanted for so long, and is happening now. And I think it's a great thing for all of Eve, regardless of who wins or loses.
Yeah. So your perspective on where you guys are at so far, I'm sure you're happy with the progress, but what do you think is going to happen? Is it still up in the air? Can it go either way? Or is this starting to be?
Absolutely. I think it could go either way. They could, it could still hinge off one decisive set piece battle. Or it could be the cumulative effect of losing a series of structures or iHubs, or them rallying elsewhere. And I think it could still very much, there's still a lot of fight left in the people that we're engaging. There's a lot of fight left in the Imperium, a lot of the good. This war is not won or lost by any means. I think you'll see it go on for months longer, and it'll be one of endurance and attrition. Which is great. That the longer it goes on for, the better it is, I think. There's a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about committing to something longer term, and people investing, both sides investing huge sums of money and in-game assets to fight this war. And it's something that had been stockpiled for a long time. People drawing down on things that they've worked for 4 or 5 years in the kind of super capital proliferation era that we've been through since 2016. And you're starting to see people draw down on all of that wealth that they've amassed now. And I think, to be honest, CCP probably want to see it go for longer as well, to run down that vast stockpile of assets that both sides have amassed.
Yeah, I'm sure they want you to drop a Keepstar every other day, just watch 1,000 Ravens die every day, and other ships, of course.
Keep burning through. Well, we'll get to the 2 towers in just a second. Last question. You think that the scarcity is affecting the war of attrition, the scarcity development that CCP is doing?
Not yet, no. I don't think so, not yet. I think both sides have deep enough pockets and reserves to for that not to be a factor for some time. I think if that was a factor, we would have seen it by now.
Right. Okay, so the latest news after you guys have taken a bunch of iHubs in Delve is, are you preparing to target your first Keepstars since you moved into Delve?
Well, the 49 dash
Keepstar
is in reinforced. It's not a Delve Keepstar, but it is in reinforced. That's the ones. They're trying to anchor a couple of them in K6 and W-K, I think, W-K. We'll see. I mean, there hasn't been much fighting on Keepstars so far, or in relation to Keepstars. We'll see if that changes. There is one in reinforced, and we'll see what happens there. It comes out of the armor timers tonight in 5 hours, 5-6 hours, I think.
So you may or may not show up to that fight.
We'll see. It depends if I'm awake if I show up. It's 2 a.m. my time, so no promises here.
There's a lot of U.S. time zone fights, aren't there?
Yeah, so they changed structure and solve timers to sort of mid to late US time zone, which has been interesting because it's changed the dynamics of how our time zones work. So the non-US time zones have done a lot of the preliminary work to support the timers that we've gone out on one. And that's been a great coalition-wide time zone, cross-time zone effort to kill the iHubs that we've been killing. And that's been a really interesting dynamic because we haven't had a war recently which has worked quite the same way. And I think we've learned a lot from other time zone type wars that we've fought. And that's been really cool. And for someone who plays predominantly in the EU time zone, so, I'll stay up later to make the US timers, but, primarily I play before 0-100 Eve time. There's still been plenty to do. It's not like it's been barren in the EU time zone at all. There's been a lot of fight. They've been quite aggressive in defending things that we've gone to reinforce, counterforming for things that have been put into initial timer and stuff. There's been a lot going on in all of the time zones, despite the fact that they moved their SOV and structures into the US time zone.
What do we think of how Aegis SOV is working these days? Have they iterated enough to make it kind of interesting, or is it still an impediment to?
It hasn't really. I don't think there've been any real changes to it apart from the way that they changed the node spawning and the node percentages a while back. As someone who really does not like Aegis SOV, the system, I don't like it. I preferred the Dominion system. I haven't found it that bad, though, to be honest. I think a lot of that stems from me having a better understanding of it now, and just sucking it up and getting on with it after several years. But it's been interesting. Like they say a lot of the other side says a lot of things about the way that it works for the defender versus the attacker. Personally, in the format of this war and the way things have worked, I have actually quite enjoyed it. We've taken, so from the PL perspective, PL and Recon have taken on a kind of a much more flexible role in those Entosis timers, where we've formed things like Harpies or Jackdaws, and we've gone from system to system, clearing nodes, counter Entosising, doing stuff like that, and that's been quite interesting. I've never done that on the scale that we're doing it now, and I have actually quite enjoyed that. Part of me does wish that we were just going iHub to iHub with Supercarriers like we did back in the day, but there's no point pouting about that now, I guess.
I think one of the funnier things is you personally have taken, I mean, there are others as well, but you personally have taken the region of Delve in every single SOV system, right? You've captured at least one system in each SOV system, right? So you did it in the pre-Dominion, where you had to drop the POSs, then in Dominion with the SBUs, you've conquered Delve a few times, and now in the Aegis SOV, you're taking your first systems in Delve with the Aegis SOV system.
Yeah, there's something about Delve. There are two regions in Eve, Delve and Providence, which just seem to draw me back every time. Not entirely sure why. But yeah, it's been okay. I hope that they iterate and develop it further or change it in the future. But for the purposes of this war, I think we think that it's a weak area for the people we're fighting is Entosis, which is part of the reason that they don't associate a huge amount of importance to iHubs and the defense of iHubs, and they focus mainly on the structure side of things. But we know iHubs have a role to play in existing in nullsec, and that's why we focus on them, and that's why they're always integral to any kind of nullsec invasion or defense of an invasion. But Aegis SOV I felt a lot less aggrieved by Aegis SOV in this war than I have in previous wars, for sure.
All it took was a big war for you guys to say, "Oh, it's not so bad."
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so tell us, okay, so what are your plans going today and the next week or so? Like, are there 2 Keepstars that are reinforced, or there's just one?
There's one.
There's just one. Okay.
There's 2, apparently. I just learned today. I had no idea. There's a Tabby Keepstar, or rather a test
you mean
Keepstar.
The OSIF one.
Yeah, in Paragon Sol, right? So each side has reinforced a Keepstar of their opponent.
Oh, what's going to happen here?
It's true. I mean, they did that on, Friday night?
Yeah, I think so. I don't actually know very much about the force that shot it. Like, that entire constellation has been Entosised by the Imperium, like, that are kind of working in the background that you don't actually see too much, right? So they're defending Delve.
Initiative?
I think it's the Initiative and Bastion.
Well, no, there are two. This is slightly there. This is quite nuanced in this. So the initiative, I think, reinforced the Keepstar, and Vily's in the chat, and maybe you can get him on Matterall, and he could give you
Sure, Vily,
the
if you want to
scoop on
jump in.
this. But I believe they reinforced it in Ishtar's, and it went on for quite a while because they're about half damage cap on it, and bled a little bit on it. But then separately from that, the Bastion has taken up this role of guerrilla warfare in Esoteria, working with the local Russians and causing trouble there. Vily can tell you more about that, but I think they're two distinct things.
You got to introduce Vily.
Oh,
that's
and
part of your job.
Sorry.
Good.
And here we have Vily, who is the ceremonial head of the PASB Anaconda Coalition, and he will tell you what's going on the home front of Esoteria.
Please no. So as far as OSIF went, Initiative showed up with a 130-man Ishtar fleet on Friday afternoon while we were killing stuff in Delve, and they, were annoyed that we weren't really caring about them reinforcing Paragon Soul stuff for like the 20th time. So they went and shot the OSIF Keepstar. I went and gunned it for a while. It took them an hour and 20 minutes or something like that because they were nowhere near damage cap, and we, for the most part, let them reinforce it. They've got an option today actually to come shoot it again with Ishtars, but I think they'll find the result will be a little different this time.
Is it time to conflict with your form up for your offensive operations?
No, all the test stuff is timed in Euro time zone, so all of the goon stuff is in US time zone, so it balances. We've always got stuff to do in Euro, and we've always got stuff to do in US time zone, so our guys are getting no shortage of stuff to do. But yeah, they reinforced also Keepstar with Ishtars. We were just sitting on comms laughing as they were doing it. We got to doomsday a few things. It wasn't anything crazy. We just thought it was a joke more than anything. So,
do you still think it's a joke?
Yeah. I mean, it's behind not one but two regional gates. The most they're going to be able to show up there with is like a full Ishtar fleet, and if goons come up with them, a full Serb fleet. It's not going to be anything too crazy. And then they're going to sit there and try and attack a Keepstar with just subcaps against, carriers, dreads, and subs, and supers, and it's one of those things where it's like I get what they were doing. They're just trying to say, oh yeah, we reinforced the Keepstar, good on us, and we were just like, okay.
You're not worried about it. It sounds like
no. A Keepstar it's like the shield timer on anything, right? The timer is very the shield timer is always the least important timer because nobody's really got time to respond, and we had time to respond. We just didn't think. I honestly, even as they were getting through 40%, 30%, I'm like, are they actually going to reinforce this thing? Are they actually that committed to do this? They fed their 5 billion Ishtars, and we just said, okay. Yeah, sounds like they're planning on coming back for it, but it's I don't know. They've reinforced the G Magic jump rate. It's an ongoing meme now in test about how Initiative comes every second or third day to reinforce the G Magic jump bridge, and we've started calling him Jack Sparrow, the G Magic jump bridge, and it's
Jack Sparrow.
Well, you can't kill him. He just I think they've killed it 3 or 4 times in the war, but they've reinforced it easily 30 times. That jump bridge has been reinforced, and it's just this giant meme now. For Initiative coming to waste their guys' time, so we just kind of sit and enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah, tell us your perspective on what Hedliner was just talking about, the work you're doing inside of Delph, the iHubs and Sotios and stuff.
Well, it's just that slow, continuous grind of trying to push deeper and deeper into Delph. We're now, bit by bit approaching 1DQ. Every iHub we take, removes all of the upgrades in the system. It removes all the SOV upgrades in the system, so no more jammers, bridges, or gens. The ratting upgrades disappear. The mining upgrades disappear every time we kill an iHub. That further condenses the amount of available space for them to rat and mine in, which means that it makes it easier for our Cloaca campers to farm kills. I know one of our groups, for example, the other day, literally went on a Myrmidon killing spree where every 5 minutes they were able to find a new Myrmidon to kill just because it's so condensed now and so easy. And it's just continuing to strangle and tighten the noose, I guess you could say, on the Imperium bit by bit. And now, obviously, they've enacted their Helm's Deep plan and retreated to their final 4 crab pockets and kind of leaving one to queue out. So we'll see how that goes in the future, I guess.
What is that? At least maybe you can help me with this too. What is it? What does that signal? This new strategy that they're doing, the Imperium, or any of you guys?
The Helm's Deep strategy, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that what I read from that, listening to the Fireside, they didn't use the words Hell Camp, but that's kind of what they were going for, I feel. And I don't think, despite what they say and having a great heritage in hell camping stuff and people, in my opinion, doing stuff like that just burns people out. And isn't a productive use of weight of numbers, or
that's why they have a DJ.
I mean, that's completely separate. I assume you're talking about Mind One, the Saturday Night Swarm, right? Like, which is great. I listen to it every Saturday because
it helps you guys too.
I'm awake at that time and it's chill. But I think no, it's a bad use of numbers and resources, and maybe I'll be proved wrong when we assault that part of Delve, and if we fail, then maybe that'll be why. But I look at all the times in the past that people, nullsec blocks, have staged blockades or hell camps or whatever you want to call it. And the most recent one that I experienced was in UALX when Legacy and Test vowed not to let us leave, and we were gone in 5 days after that, because people didn't want to sustain sitting there every day from downtime till whatever to prevent us from logging in. I don't think that the line member, the casual Eve player, the guy that logs in, responding to pings, joining fleets, is conditioned to do that every day. Maybe in a COVID environment, maybe they are a little bit more, but I don't think it has legs. And I think we'll find ways around it.
Do you think the COVID environment has changed how the course of the war has gone compared to what stuff was like before?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes, I do. And I think that's actually a really good point. I think the COVID aspect of people working from home more and not going out and having as much flexibility in their free time and their social lives has had a very positive impact on Eve, and has definitely been, to a certain extent, measurable in the war that we've been fighting. And even before the war that we were fighting, I noticed it within our own alliance when we were in the drone regions doing lots of different experiments that I wanted to do for a long period of time. I noticed, a definite uptick in activity and kind of participation off the back of that. And I think that the timing of the war coinciding with the pandemic has actually been really convenient, because it's freed up a lot of people to play cross time zone, be more flexible in responding to stuff that happens throughout the day. I think that's definitely been a factor on both sides, and a positive one at that as well.
I think that, a lot of people are playing differently. From my experience too, my experience being in a different context than yours, obviously. But I think the entire game's probably affected to some degree from everybody being at home more often.
I think so. I think that's one of the when the UK went into its first lockdown back in March, April time, I wrote an alliance update where I said at the very end of it, like, COVID-19 and us, or you, and I said that the one silver lining of that was that we would all have a little bit more time to join fleets and participate at an alliance level. And I think that's something that's really, and at least maybe you can comment on this as well, like, this is something that's really carried throughout the duration of this year, and I think it's definitely been a factor in this war, and I think a good one as well. It's one of my few COVID silver linings, actually.
Like myself, I've been able to make European timers that I never would have made before, because I am also working from home mostly. Like, I transitioned jobs in after COVID because I didn't want to work at a location anymore. But
Yeah.
You.
It has definitely. I think it's definitely changed the landscape of Eve. We've seen the extra numbers of people playing, right? So CCP attributes this not only to COVID but also to some of the NPE stuff they do. But the fact of the matter is, regardless of what's causing it, in Eve, just like in everything, there's like a minimum critical mass that you need in order to accomplish stuff. A lot of the times, especially in previous conflicts, as Hedliner alluded to, it's one time zone that kind of does the grunt work because the other side doesn't have a critical mass in there to compete, and then the other side, has the actual fights. This time it seems to be going back and forth quite a lot. So both time, well, actually, we have to talk about 3 time zones now because China time zone is a thing, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's something kind of going around the clock, and I think COVID has a pretty big role to play in that. I do want to jump back a little bit, right? So we do have some very large bigwigs over here from the invading side, right? So we
Vily
have
and Hedliner.
Vily and Hedliner, right? So
I'm just an FC, dude. I don't have any wig. Yeah.
your
Just
wig is
a-
large.
I call it how I see it, and sometimes people listen, and other times they get upset.
So a lot of the and everyone has their own perspective, right? Which is what parts do. But I do want to even it out a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate. The idea of the Imperium moving at least some of their assets over to E3O. If you look at the map of Delve, E3O is a very important system, especially when you look at what the Pappy forces have been kind of taking away from them. Whereas you see the entire Null constellation, all those iHubs there are dead. And we actually talked about this when the YZ9 for Keepstar went down, what the plans was. And we correctly predicted, because we're geniuses here, that this would be one of the main targets to go for. A, it's very close, and B, it's kind of important to take those jump bridges away, to take those cyanogens away, to take those jammers away, because it really does split Delve in half. There's the stuff on the left of Null, and then to the right of Null.
NOL.
So this, NOL Tech M9. That's why it's a significant system.
They fed mid, defending it as well. So
exactly right. So
for anyone who's played League of Legends or Dota or whatever it's called,
I think you'll probably get some people who have played those games. But also, like E3O, if you look what the significance of that system is, right? There's only one way into the constellations behind it, and that's through E3O. You can defend those ratting pockets. You can defend, a little bit better those areas. And so that's the Imperium saying, okay, we'll give up Null, we'll give up these areas, we'll give up a little bit here. And obviously they're still taking fights in those areas. But when they position the E3O, they can not only hit more of Delve, but they can really, really protect the area behind it and keep fleets from going through. So instead of just stragglers going through and harassing people, you would need kind of a bigger force to get through there. And so to me, that shows that they're saying, hey, these are the areas of the map where we really, really care about, that we're going to make you, I guess in their words, that we're going to make you bleed if you want to take it. So they're not just sitting in their, little corner of Delve just watching little fires break out around them. They're actually saying, okay, this is the strategy that we're going to implement is this.
Do you think so? Or do you think it's just a knee-jerk reaction to us reinforcing the D-W iHub where they staged all their supers and caps before?
I don't know. I don't think I don't think that played a pretty big role. Maybe it did, right? Maybe it's a two-pronged attack there, a two-pronged reason. They like E3O better. It's more strategically significant.
I feel like it sends quite mixed messages to their members, though, right? It's like, oh, we're not abandoning 1DQ. Don't move anything out of there. We're just restaging caps. However, this is the Helm's Deep plan, and you don't need to be a Lord of the Rings aficionado to know that the Rohan went to Helm's Deep when all else was lost, right? They went there because it was a dead end, and those goblin people came up to the wall and they fought them back, and that was it, right? To me, I put myself in the shoes of an uninformed Imperium line member. I take two very different messages from what they were saying, right? Listening to the fireside. We got the Helm's Deep plan, which we've had for many, many months or whatever. We retreat to the impregnable fortress. We're not abandoning 1DQ. By the way, it's on the outside of the Helm's Deep wall. I don't know.
Along with the majority of your important SOTUs.
Exactly, right? I think it sends mixed messages. And what I would say as well is that they didn't sound like, listening to that fireside, and this is not me spinning in any way, they just didn't sound like people who had much clunking around in their big box of ideas. It sounded very, we're gonna, the Helm's, the deep this. It was that, right? And I don't know. Like, I know they had record numbers and stuff like that. I don't buy it personally.
So that's the thing, right? That's the thing that I've always said, that the Imperium had been doing very, very well in this entire war. They are keeping their members motivated by hook or by crook, however you want to call it. They know what their members want to hear. They tell them what they want to hear, and the members respond to it. It's not just the INN. Not just like the meta show just memeing around with Brisk and stuff.
But I would contest that point today, because this fireside, where they announced this Helm's Deep plan, they had announced, great news, big plan, war, trying to push the, be there, great news kind of thing, because they were trying to push this message. They wanted everybody to show up to this plan, and people will always turn in for good news, right? Like it's. Hell yeah, we finally got a plan. It's going to solve all our problems. Yes, what is it? And then Helm's Deep. And people go, oh.
Yeah, and this is the point that I'm making here, right? It's like, I agree with what you're saying, Elise, is that they do a very good job of telling their members what they need to hear, what they want to hear, keep them motivated. Their flash forming, and their forming on critical timers has been pretty good up until an NOL on Friday night, which was weak, and they've done a pretty good job of doing that through till now. But I think there's mixed messaging here now, and I would question whether that's carrying through into this latest kind of phase of the war. But maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. I mean, I'm not, I'm pretty ignorant at the best of times. I don't know everything. I make things up on the fly half the time. And I'm not well schooled in defensive warfare by any means, by virtue of having nothing to defend for the majority of my time in nullsec and going for broke and usually ending up with less than I had to begin with. But for me, listening to that from putting myself in the shoes of the line member, there was mixed messaging there, and it just seemed pretty weak in terms of this is our plan.
All right, that is from your perspective. We don't know like what their membership, how they took it, if they think it's great
well, they
or
moved
motivating.
2,000 people into E3OI, so I'm assuming they took it fairly well.
Pretty well, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah. This will all be revealed in time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we have to kind of keep in focus here, right? No matter how you guys view it, right? And I like strategically, I would agree with you, but I'm also on that side of the invading force. If I try to stay a little bit more impartial, the Imperium responded well to the whole thing. They're hearing messages that makes them happy. The morale on the ground isn't, hey, let me fire sale everything I own and just have one foot out the door. It's rah, 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 let's keep this train going, bring everything.
And I think that shows you how distinct and the two player bases on either side of this war are. You've got one that is diehard bought into the narrative, spin, call it what you want, like on the Imperium side, and you have other people who are, for lots of different reasons, against that. And the main thing that kind of has brought them all together is that they want to unpick that and dismantle it bit by bit.
Is there any group in EVE from the biggest to the smallest that doesn't spin things, though?
I mean, I'm biased, but I like to think that.
I mean, everybody's biased, and that's why they spin things. Right?
I like to think that I have very little spin in my
repertoire.
I'm honest with people most of the time. It's like this is.
I don't think anybody's really even being dishonest, though. Like, people are generally saying things they believe. Maybe some people are dishonest, but
okay.
I think there's a lot of dishonesty out there.
I think you're right. There's a lot of dishonesty out there. Maybe honesty was the wrong word, but like I just tell things how they are to our members, and just say, okay, this is going on, that's going on. We messed this up. We did this really well. This means that. I think this means this. Rather than trying to put the opposite spin.
It's important to understand that perspective creates spin no matter what you're going to do. Two people can look at the same thing from different angles and draw different conclusions, right? That is kind of the natural spin you're talking about. But there is another level of spin which is very I don't want to say sinister, that sounds wrong, but like pervasive in the Imperium that most people have experienced through the years, primarily usually through the meta show and other avenues of the Imperium, which really kind of draws that ire up. Even last week, right? The claim went out, AOM had left the war, and yet here they are sitting in Esoteria with us right now, trying to help us deal with some of our problems, right? Like, there's a line of attack there that they know is not necessarily true, that they want to utilize to change the narrative.
I confirmed with Fulcrum from AOM they have not left the war. It was ridiculous.
That's absolutely right. They have not left the war, and the reason that they probably haven't been seen as much front and center in the war as people might expect is because this war has not really been fought much in the AU China time zone. Like, you could say the same about Fraternity. That Fraternity is still involved in the war. They're just not front and center of it because it's happening in the EU and the US time zone, and a lot of the background stuff actually does happen in the AU China time zone.
But that kind of thing is not, to me, that's not spin. That's just disinformation.
Exactly, it's disinformation.
And there's a lot of that too. It's mixed in there. When you talk from your point of view, or especially when you try to guess what the other group is doing, which is what you guys are doing, then there's like, it can be an analysis, but it could also be an analysis to psychologically warfare them, to kind of demoralize them. It could be either one of those things. And we don't really know what you guys are doing in this case, but it is difficult to talk about EVE Online, to get deeper into the subjects that we want to without your own biases coming up. We fully embrace bias. That's why we want multiple voices, more voices from different sides, from different play styles, and that's how we deal with it. But okay, Elise, did you finish this up? We want to move on to Triglavian stuff in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And just while we have Hedliner and Vily here, I think I gave a lot of credit to the Imperium for motivating their members. And if you've been listening, we've been giving you the same level of credit, right? Like, you guys know exactly what your members want to hear. You tell them what's going on, and you are showing them results as well. So it is kind of cool where I think if you pull, at least maybe you'll agree with me before yesterday, but I think even now, if you pull any member from any side of the fight here and ask them, are you winning? They will emphatically say, yeah, we're winning. We're the good guys here.
I wouldn't. I think that's being too simplistic about it. I think what I would say from and I speak purely for my own members, right? For Pandemic Legion members only here, is that they understand with absolute clarity why we form up as hard as we do and why we go out and do what we're doing. And they're invested in that. And that does eventually, once you carry it all through, equate to fighting and winning a war. But they're 100% bought in, which is why they're here, why they've been here for years and years, why people come back, why people are joining week to week. and why they stick with it on ops on a Monday night where we form up at 1900 and finish at 0200, and they stick there and like one person logs off because their wife's saying, you can either log off EVE Online or you can leave the house. They're invested 100% because they want to do what we're doing. And that's, regardless of spin, narrative, whatever. I think that's the way I would put it. We don't see ourselves, my guys don't see them as the good guys. They see themselves as combatants.
I mean, in the New Eden universe, pretty much everybody's a bad guy of some sort, right? This is one of the darkest fictional universes that's ever been made.
I mean, we've been the bad guys in whatever light you shine on us on Pandemic Legion.
Everybody's the bad guy.
We're still the shadiest, dirtiest.
That's why I shoot both sides of the war. Everybody's the bad guy. I'm also the bad guy, by the way.
I don't know what you guys are talking about, but last I checked, Test Alliance, good guy. Little guy fighting for. Yeah, exactly. Like, come on.
The shining beacon of light, decency, and all that's good and pure in New Eden.
Yeah. What's your body count from the crew members of the ships you've killed around Hilo and Nullsec? Like, pretty high.
Yeah, obviously there are casualties incurred for engaging in war in the millions and the billions.
Test
right?
was one of the biggest groups that helped flip Rarivos. The entire system was basically genocided because of you. I'm just saying.
Pretty bad guys.
Last I checked, we were there with the evacuation parties trying to help too, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much to evacuate because Sarvog Clade pretty much murdered everybody on the ground shortly after Rarivos.
I'm not checking that we participated in those massacres, okay?
You facilitated them. You were the catalyst to the massacres.
But when EDCOM came, we were there trying to help too. We had our refugee parties. We had our
You were the ones who caused the problem by flipping the system.
Those were some rogue capsuleers in test, and they were
Did you kick their corpse? Did you kick their corpse? I want evidence on my desk by 5 p.m.
We didn't necessarily kick their corporations. But we had
all right, you're complicit. Get out.
Were they in Spartan Vanguard, Vily?
They may have been.
Then they're on there. Okay, anyways.
And then your message is what got goons to show up to Arsia. Right, all of EdenCom basically blames you.
I think that was Brave, wasn't it? Oh man,
it was Brave, and then it was us. And then listen, we tried to choose the good side. It's not our fault.
You didn't deploy to actually contest them in any real.
I went
capacity.
to sleep. I thought I would wake up and we'd have some fun and try and defend the helpless.
That's not how any of it worked.
How dare you, Vily? Go to sleep. Let war crimes happen while you're asleep.
I will say this is a pretty nice segue into the Triglavian news, but also
what are you, an EDCOM reporter?
When we talk about Rarivos,
yes.
I tricked Hedliner into going to Rarivos once while we were living in LSQ.
Yeah, fuck you for that as well.
And I told everyone all about the lore, exactly what it meant.
Yeah, you sold me that on the 18 jumps it took us to get there, being like, it's going to be so great. The lore this, the lore that. We got there, we walked around for 90 minutes, killed one thing, lost 5 ships, left.
It's going to be a great party, Hedliner.
Yeah, he was like PvP on an unprecedented scale. Lies.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot going on.
I got some good kills in Rarivos. I got some good kills in Rarivos.
Yeah, unless you're in a 150-man Dominic's fleet run by Bjorn B. Absolute lies.
No. My 30-person Harbinger fleet got kills in Rarivos.
Shameful, Elise.
But somebody got their first kill in Rarivos when we went into a flashpoint and they shot the wrong Guardian, and then the Dreadnought killed the Guardian. The NPC Dreadnought. It went into the Hyper Siege. It ramped up and killed the Guardian. I do feel that's somebody's first kill of the game.
I've had friends that have said, you got to come to this party. It's going to be just amazing. And then you go for a 45-minute drive and it's 3 people and it's just terrible. Anyway, Elise, take us out of here. Where are we going next?
Oh, so, at the end of the Triglavian invasion, the Trigs ended up just, and this is going to be a very crude discussion of it. They just sucked up a bunch of systems and they're like, this is ours now. And so Arsia is one of the systems. In fairness to Vily and the rest of Test and Legacy and anyone who sent out messages, the minute Arsia was announced as a possible system, it was destined to get sucked into Trig space. There was no stopping it. There was no force.
Until Goon showed up, we were pushing it back up.
Yeah, there is no force in the world that could have stopped that.
Hey, you know the best thing about all of that is that Scarcon got absorbed by the Triglavian.
No, Scarcon. Oh God, I have so much to say about Scarcon. All right.
You know.
Do you know how long I was in Scarcon? All right. That's all I can say. Scarcon has the worst luck of any system in EVE over the entire course of its
it borders
history.
the drone it used to border the drone regions, and like,
no, actually,
I don't have to keep the ADM up there. Put
the thing about Scarcon being next to the drone regions is the way the wormholes work to get into the specific systems is that they can be within 3 jumps of where it used to be. So the wormhole is the locations are split. It can be in Ethereum Reach or it can be in Molten Heath, and if it's not in one, you have to go all the way around to look in the other, and it's so terrible.
By the way, you can jump out of Scarcon can you jump into Ethereum Reach or not?
Not anymore, no.
You can jump out from Scarcon into Ethereum Reach.
So essentially,
you can't jump in.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
That's bullshit. Wait, so you can go into Ethereum Reach, but you can't go out?
You can't. You can't jump the gate. You can jump a capital ship.
No, well, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
if
you can't jump the gate.
Into Ethereum Reach,
but you can jump the wormhole, which will be within 3 jumps of where it was. But you have to open it from the outside.
Gotcha.
Well, essentially, what we're saying is because one of those systems was captured that leads from Empire space over to nullsec, because that one system that is the bridge system has been captured, you no longer have that gateway to go to Ethereum Reach. So what is that, Horde space? It's a little safer now than it was?
My space. Like we took L4X over and made it our capital and kept the ADM up because we were like, we don't want people messing with that because it's the only constellation in Ethereum Reach which is way out of range of everything else. It's like, all right, we were living in LXQ at the time, running our daily Caracal fleets. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll police that. And that was a mistake because we then left 3 weeks later to fight this war. So Scarcon being disconnected from L4X was the best thing for me.
I like how Scarcon got the NPC Dev Actor live event, little mini live events before it died. It deserved a good send off, and it really got a dramatic one. It had like NPC actors and stuff. It was a time. It was a time to be alive in Scarcon.
Cool. So that door got sealed up, which was pretty good for you. We actually have a video. Let's roll the video, MacCloud. Let's go to the second part of that scope video. It talks about the Triglavian enhancements that have come around. So we'll check that out.
Look at that gap, dude. That makes me so happy.
Believed that the creation of an artificial region consisting of the 27 New Eden systems conquered by the invaders was the final act in the Triglavian campaign. Despite the cessation of invasions, Edencom's Provost Marshal Cassia Valkanir has secured ongoing funding for the organization from CONCORD and the 4 core empires, reiterating the need for vigilance.
New Eden's people have suffered many grievous blows and fought hard throughout the invasion. I have witnessed the strength of our fighters, the loyalty of our supporters, the persistence of our collective defense with my own eyes. I am proud of all of our people. Yes, civilization has lost territory to the inhuman Triglavian invaders. Yes, we have lost many billions to naked aggression, treachery, and occupation. We must look to preserve what we have defended and remain vigilant. Even still, we cannot forget those who remain under the heel of the invaders. Edencom will continue to fight for their recovery and liberty. I welcome and deeply appreciate the continuing commitment of the CONCORD member states to the struggle.
Edencom's best minds in the fields of exploration, science, and military logistics are continuing to work on an effort to map the alterations to the space-time topology of the invaded systems and New Eden in general. Though it is gravely dangerous, Edencom's forces continue to gather data on Pochven systems, disrupt Triglavian operations, and seek means to navigate the region more effectively. Evacuation of the billions still trapped remains out of reach, but it is a highly political priority for the empires. For their part, the Triglavians have rapidly moved to assert even deeper control over the systems and worlds of Pochven. Having divided the spoils between their 3 clades, there are disturbing and clear signs of vast changes being wrought in space and on the planets of the occupied systems. The Triglavians are opposed by Edencom, but also by resurgent drifter incursions, with hostile and highly advanced rogue drones also making their presence felt. As so often, the Triglavian spokesperson Zoria Triglav has broadcast a message asserting their dominion and apparently encouraging the treacherous Kybernauts, or Capsuleers, that have gone over to the Triglavian side.
We are Zoria Triglav. We speak for the convocation of Triglav outside this struggle. We continue the work of sublimation. Subordinate Kybernauts, hear the words of our prayer. Heed them. Totality and the weaving of Pochven. The flow of has been anchored in the domain of Pochven. Stabilization of the ancient domains proceeds. Clatistic dominioning glorification. Glorification has been invoked. Clouds within the struggle have imminence. Imminence in their cries. Foreign Narodnia, proving fitness to join the flow, shall be glorified. Shall be glorified. Kybernauts proving praxis Pochlost extirpation shall be glorified. Subornost Kybernauts are exhorted to extirpate Pochlost elements. We continue the work of sublimation of Pochlost flow. We speak for the convocation of Triglav outside this struggle. We are Zoria Triglav.
Many aspects of Pochven remain uncertain. In particular, it is unknown if the effects of Triglavian stellar manipulations have stabilized, or if further changes could occur in the region and even beyond. Certain changes have become very clear. Navigation across Pochven is notably possible via Triglavian conduit gates made accessible to their Kybernaut allies. The means of entering or leaving Pochven are apparently limited to space-time filaments and unstable wormholes. The variability and pattern of emergence of the latter remains a subject of deep study. The Triglavians do not allow the construction of new structures, but existing structures have been allowed to remain. Additionally, the Triglavians seized control of Empire-controlled stations, limiting many services to Allied pilots. While some capital ships remain at large in Pochven, capital ship construction has been prohibited. It's also impossible to generate sinusoidal beacons for jump drives, although jump drive-equipped ships may leave the region. The status of planets in Pochven is of highest concern to many. In particular, populated planets such as temperate worlds and industrialized barren planets are a matter of great concern. The Triglavians' attitude to planetary populations and their movements is uncertain and appears to differ across the clades. Access to planetary surfaces by customs offices and construction of new gantries and colonies remains possible. Ultimately, the disruptions caused inside Pochven are tremendous, but the effects on New Eden itself are still working themselves out. Trade routes have been severed, strategic systems lost, and massive political upheavals are underway. The core empires are maintaining a united front for now, but many observers doubt that this can last forever. This is Lena Amber, reporting for The Scope.
All right. Oh, good. All right. So there was a recent update for Pochven that added 4 new types of sites that were roughly as maybe slightly more difficult than emerging conduits were. Emerging conduits being the lowest level of the Triglavian sites in the invasion. There's one for each of the 4 main factions that run around Pochven. There's the Torpid Sleeper Hive, which is obviously you fight sleepers. The Insepid Drone Swarm, which you fight the rogue drones. The Edencom Scout Fleet, you fight Edencom, or the Convocation Watch Post, where you fight Triglavians. They're anomalies that exist within the Pochven systems, the 27 systems that the Triglavians stole from New Eden. And it basically adds a little more life to these systems that needed some more things to do within them. And we're hearing that there's more sites to come. There's probably going to be if I would have to guess, I would say there'd also be minor and major conduit analogs. Like these are the emerging conduit analogs, and they do escalate up to the officer, like the Zorias and like the presiding NPCs, depending on the faction. So it does seem like the prices are going down a little bit for the materials that are from Pochven, even if the supply isn't getting back to fantastic levels yet. So maybe Tech 2 Trig ships will start getting a little more affordable again, and the Edencom ships as well.
Yeah, so basically on a very high level, they are continuing to iterate on, the new Triglavian region of Pochven, whatever. They seem to call it something slightly different every time they mention it. But
sticking with Pochven.
I do think that the most important change is still that they fix the wormholes, so you can actually get into a specific system that you want to get into now if you put forth a little effort. Because when it first came out, the wormholes were broken, and there are sometimes you could just never find your way into one system unless you could take gates.
Sorry to interrupt. For the uninformed person such as myself, how do you still need the certain level of standings to get into
you need a certain level of standings to dock at stations. That's like 0 standings. You need a certain level of standings to take gates. That level depends on where the gates are. So Pochven is divided into 3 constellations, 1 for each of the 3 clades of the Triglavians. So the systems on the border, you need at least 1.0 with the Triglavians to jump the gates in those systems. The systems in the middle of the region that aren't on the border and they're not the home systems, you need at least a 3.0 standing. And the home systems, 1 home system per constellation, you need 7.0 standings to jump the gates.
7.0?
7.0 to jump into the home system.
And where do you get that standing from?
Fighting Edencom, fighting rogue drones, and fighting sleepers. It's most efficient to get it from fighting Edencom, but that means that Edencom will attack you in high and low sec. Rogue drones and sleepers within Pochven give you standing for both Edencom and Triglavians, so you can get positive with both of them now, which kind of wipes away consequences that might be associated with both. But it is slower. Once people start getting the standing, the 1 and then the 3 standing to jump gates, it becomes noticeably faster to get standing, because you can shoot a sleeper NPC in one system and jump over to the next system and shoot a drone and jump over to the next system, and they're separate timers. Anybody who knows how security status and standings work would be familiar with that. You can get 1 tick per, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
I think it's 15 minutes. So you get 1 tick per system per 15 minutes.
Per 15 minutes. So you just keep jumping systems around the circle once you get the standing.
So how long does it take you to get, say, to
the 3?
The 3.
It was really, really bad at first, but it is noticeably faster to the point. It's too bad Suetonia isn't here, because he grinded it up under the new.
I I think Ashtarothi said he got to 3 in like 24 hours or something.
But he was pretty close to start, right? Because he was on the trick side.
No, but he actually started from 0, a new character.
All right, so like 24 hours to 3. That's not too bad. Like it was really, really bad, like undoably bad when Pochven first came out. Except for the great drone kicking of the walls that the standings got reverted for after CCP declared it an exploit.
I've been tinkering with it as well. Did different ways to do it. I'm probably not the most efficient way to do it, but I got to just over 1.9 in the course of basically a day and a half. So not quite to 3. Right. But there are a lot of little neat implications. And as Baleful mentioned, there are a lot of like pain points that have been improved. So now I think someone on Reddit did the math before the area was like fixed up a little bit. It would have taken you like a month of just solid grinding.
It was 3 months working it as a 40-hour-a-week job.
Yeah. So now you can do it reliably in a week if you're relatively casual, or if you're super hardcore, you can do it in a weekend. And I'm sure people will kind of figure out how to game the system even better. You don't even really need a PvP ship to do it because the NPCs actually fight one another quite a bit. You can tag the NPC and then, so you can just go there in a very small ship or an exploration ship. And also, as Baleful mentioned, they also fixed how the wormholes work. So before it was almost impossible to get in, and the filaments to enter the region were prohibitively expensive.
But now the filaments are dropping a lot, right? They're dropping a lot. They are now a lot cheaper. You can grab a filament. There's 3 different kinds of filaments. One that takes you to one of the border systems, one that takes you to one of the internal systems, and one that takes you to one of the home systems. They don't require any standing to use a filament. There's also filaments that take you from Triglavian space out to a Triglavian minor victory. They won 28 minor victories, I think. So you have about a 50% chance to land in high sec and a 50% chance to land in low sec when you do that. Because it's about half and half split.
They did change it, right? So before, the getting in and out was kind of hard. You would land on these wormholes and you'd be 80 kilometers from it, and it would be guarded by NPCs. So you basically instantly die.
Yeah, you can warp directly to the wormholes now. So it's not dead space. You can warp on grid.
Yeah, and there's one for every system, and it takes you out to, as Baleful mentioned, within 3 jumps of where the system used to be. One of the neat implications of this, right, and this is something that I think Bjornby is going to capitalize on, and why a lot of people you'll see are starting to care about these standings and trying to grind them up, is because you can filament out of anywhere you want to go to nullsec using just a nullsec filament. After you're done, you're like, well, I don't want to go home. I don't want to get camped. I don't want to die. So what people are going to do is you can filament into Pochven, and then you can take the gates within the system to get to Sakenta, which was right next to Jita. Probe your way out, and you'll always be within like 5 or 6 jumps of Jita. So no matter where you are in the game, you can go to nullsec, go to wormhole space, whatever, and then filament back in, take some gates, and end up at Jita, more or less, within 6 jumps. It makes, if you're like a 15-man roaming gang, it makes that incredibly handy if you have these standings. And if you don't have standings, you can just filament out of Pochven, as Baleful mentioned, but you kind of go into a, not quite a random spot, but not as predictable.
Not sure if this fits into what you guys are discussing, but there was a question in the chat that says, what's the purpose of EdenCom? Which, I mean, is a question that I don't know the answer to either. So
I think it's a question that Baleful Does Know Me is the best suited to answer. However, I have a feeling she's going to echo the same sentiment.
Go ahead, Arsia.
All right, so EdenCom was a joint, in-game wise, in-game world-wise, EdenCom is a joint operation of the 4 empires and CONCORD to defend against the Triglavian invaders. It is still around because they're looking for ways to get into Pochven, try to take the systems and the people back who are trapped in the system. Game mechanics-wise, it was a way of letting the players fight against the Triglavians and not get standing hits for the 4 empires, because it would be bad gameplay wise if you interacted with the event and then couldn't go to Jita.
All right. So, but the takeaway from that video is that they're really retooling the place after it had a launch that was a little rough, and it's now easier to access that content, and they will continue to evolve that, right? And there's some new missions there or something like that.
There's new event sites. I don't think there's new missions.
There's no missions. There's just the anomalies that are about the equivalent of maybe a little harder than an emerging conduit, which was, once again, the lowest level site in the invasion.
Is it correct to say that this will now be also the primary source of Triglavian chips, or will you still get them from the trace things that people do?
The salvage for like Tech 2 Triglavian ships and some of the stuff for the Edencom ships and LP stores are primarily in Pochven. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. I guess CCP's envisaging that people transition from doing what they were doing before into the new
there's
space,
still stuff in the abyssal sites. Like they just added like the harder tier 6 of the abyssal sites too. So there's still a lot of stuff to get there to make like profit and such. But for the Tech 2 ships at least, because the Tech 2 ships are actually ships that were. They took Triglavian designs. The Empires took Triglavian designs and iterated on them. Like the Zarmazd wasn't built by the Triglavians. It was built by the Amar. The Ikatursa was built, I think, by the Caldari. Is that right? Which one is which? The Draugr was built by the Minmatar. I think the Ikatursa was the Caldari and the Nurgle was the Glente, but I might be mixing them up.
I mean, you can just say it and we'll believe you 100%.
Yeah. No, I do want to be right. I might be mixing those.
But the Empires improved on or worked with Triglavian technology to make the T2 versions, which makes sense because Triglavians wouldn't make a T2 version.
Iki is Caldari, so that is. I got it right. Wow.
Nailed it.
All right. So let's move on to this next section here. Where we're going to talk about Eve Pulse video that came out, and we got to look at Jita and what it's going to look like, along with some other things going on, like the Eve NT Alliance Open. Yeah, roll the video.
Welcome to the Pulse, your regular news beat from EVE Online. A major new upgrade to the Encounter Surveillance System, or ESS, will be going live in EVE very soon. The new ESS will come online alongside the Dynamic Bounty System, and together they will reshape ratting in nullsec. The ESS is no longer optional and will be present by default in all nullsec systems. Unlike the current ESS, the percentage of bounties generated and paid will now be split between the main bank and the reserve bank. For more details, check out the dev blog linked in the description. In addition to last week's changes, there's been another update to content in the Pochven region. There are now combat sites of varying difficulty located within the region, inhabited by Triglavians, Edencom, drifters, and rogue drones, with additional sites due to appear in the coming weeks. A new episode of The Scope was released this week, with more news on the ongoing war in nullsec between Pappy and the Imperium. Lena Amber reports as Pappy finally established a beachhead in the Imperium heartland of Delve. There's also more information on Triglavian activity in the Pochven region, with a statement from Edencom's Provost Marshal, Cassia Valkanir. The big unveiling of the new Jita trade hub in Caldari space is now close. Still the busiest station in all of New Eden, Jita 4.4's renovation is to be celebrated in-game with a daily login event and a series of parades across HiSec with challenges. Daily rewards consist of a new set of special Jita celebration fireworks, and capsuleers can get skins and apparel from the parade challenges. There will also be a CCP TV art stream on the 10th of November discussing the changes to Jita, Supercarriers and more, so be sure to catch that on Twitch. The Alliance Open tournament, hosted by EVE NT, will be starting on the weekend of November 14th and 15th and concluding the following weekend of the 21st and the 22nd. There will be 32 teams representing major EVE alliances, fighting for glory and an incredible 700 billion ISK prize pool, skins and more. Catch all the action on the EVE NT Twitch channel. There will be a sale in EVE Online's New Eden store. You can get the Hyperion Aliastra skin, Tempest Nephantar skin, Osprey Navy Issue Steel Cardinal skin, and Sacrilege EOM skin for 11 plex each. That's all for this episode.
Well, yeah, there's a couple things there in that Eve Pulse. Thing that jumps out at me is that Palace Jita 4.4 is changing its form. It's been taking over a year, I believe, and it just looks completely different, completely unique, and massive. Did we lose Hedliner? Is he sliding off?
You just got pulled into the abyss somehow. I have a feeling he'll be back. We had the updates to Jita look incredible, right? So it's something that's been going on for months and months and months. And so this is, I guess, not the culmination of it. They're probably going to keep doing more, but look how cool it looks. It looks like, I don't know, there's just like this giant shopping mall slash like city center type thing.
Well, it is kind of a shopping mall, right? And it is it's the biggest trade hub in the game, so it should look impressive.
Yeah, they really they took their time building it. You could see it build in stages, but it's kind of funny that it went from like quarter built to being done. Is this going to be released during this next patch? Because we're talking about a patch that's coming in a few days, right? Do we know if this is if Jita is going to look different after November 10th?
I think it'll look different after Tuesday. Yeah.
Wow.
It's been changing ever so slightly every single patch, like when they roll out new content.
So it's your last chance to really take pictures of it in progress, because after Tuesday it'll look completely different. Okay. Yeah, that's a really amazing art. And I think CCP is actually, it said it there, going to have like a demonstration of what they did to it, how they did it, what the process was. You might want to check that out. Okay, but for you guys, we have player experts here. As soon as Hedliner decloaks, we'll get his opinion too. But we still have Vily here, and we want to talk about some of the big changes coming in this next patch. What are some of the headline changes, Elise?
So the biggest one, and something we covered, and CCP covered as well on Wednesday, we had a little after show right after, but Carnero's hosted a show with CCP Psych and CCP Ratati, and two people whose names I completely forgot. Dawn and, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I forgot the other name, but basically NPC focused, like ratters for the major coalitions. So someone from Brave and then someone from the Imperium as well. To get their insight, they asked some really pointed questions, which are good. But ratting, as you know it in nullsec, is going to change. There's going to be a mandatory ESS in every system. CONCORD is going to ploop one out at a spot that won't be able to be gamed too hard. There's a specific rule of engagement when you're in the ESS. And basically what this means is if you've been living under a rock, all the money that gets earned into a system, there's a portion of it that gets siphoned off and shoved into this ESS, which is like a little bank. They have a main bank and a reserve bank, and it pays out every 3 hours. But because of the structure exists, you'll be able to go in there, and then attacker will be able to take a little bit of that money out in the form of tokens, and then when they get home, they can sell it at a CONCORD station for that sweet cash money. Going along with this, there's also a new dynamic bounty system. So basically, if a system is being used quite extensively, the payout gets lower and lower and lower. And conversely, if a system isn't used very much and there's like other stuff that happens in there, I think they factor in jumps, kills, ISK destroyed, et cetera, that number can actually go up. So you can get rewarded for ratting in more dangerous, sparsely populated areas. And the numbers that they mentioned, I believe it can be up to 150%, so 1.5 multiplier, all the way down to a base of, I think, 30%.
Wow.
If it's like this super camp system. So you would need to spend effectively just 3 times ratting, 3 times the amount of
3 times
ratting.
as much.
Is it up to 150%? I thought it was up to 120%.
I believe they said it was 150%. I could be horribly wrong, though. There was a wonderful after show that we hosted and had all the cool numbers.
Well, that's good then.
Each system does start off, so this is something that they didn't really mention and wasn't on CC. each system starts off with a 115% DBS multiplier. So when this patch goes live on Tuesday, you're going to be making more money regardless of where you are. And then all the little factors get put into this little mystery box, and then the mystery box changes the DBS, so the outcome multiplier of the system. And you'll be able to see on the map what the multiplier is, so you can decide where you're going to go before that. And you can also use the agency interface to see how much is being stored in the ESS. So you can say, hey, this ESS has like 50 fat stacks in there. I want to go there. And then you can have a little fight over that.
That's gonna...
Yeah.
I think you're going to see more people roaming and more roaming gangs. And I think the roaming gangs are going to get a lot of content out of the other roaming gangs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a chat with Bjornby and Pando from Bjornby from Bank Robbers, and you probably know him from Twitch, and Pando from the Initiative. They both had a pretty strong prediction. Bjorn was a little bit more hopeful of there being more action, but that people will be moving around more. People will be jumping gates a little bit more. People will be attacking these things, at least for a little while, until people get used to the meta. So it's going to be kind of a quasi gold rush. One of the neat takeaways from this is that PvPing now kind of officially becomes a career in EVE, like an actual career path that you can make money on.
I mean, it always was, but...
Yeah, most people, at least people I knew that didn't have like a big wallet or big bankroll, they did other activities to make their money, and then they went out and did the PvP for fun.
Yeah, this is another way to get money though.
Yeah, but now this is a much more reliable way to get money, right? Because if you invade someone's system and they don't fight, you just go take their ESS and you take their hard-earned money.
How do you think it works in the coalition context, or the, say you take obviously Delve is a bad example now because it's a war zone, but the closest thing you have to an intense, intensively farmed or crabbed or region was Delve beforehand. Now it's probably one of the drone regions or branch or something like that. What do you think it means for that? Do you think it still means that you'll have a lot of people concentrated within one umbrella, or do you think they'll have to spread out to get those dank gains? Or
I think a lot of the Redders are still gonna be concentrated in an area and just take a loss. Because I think a lot of people will choose safety over profit.
See, I think you're right? They'll just do more for less and stay safe, rather than you'll have a few enterprising individuals who'll go further and farther for more, which is the way EVE has always been, I think.
I do think that it's a wonderful change for roamers who can sometimes go dozens and dozens of jumps and end up with nothing, that maybe they can get some money. It'll also drive more roaming groups that will then fight each other. People look at it like the roaming groups fighting the locals, but I think more often the roaming groups will fight the other roaming groups. I think that will... Go ahead.
Do you think it'll move us away from the, everyone making their money under a super cap umbrella kind of within the safety perimeter kind of thing? Or do you think...
I don't. I think it'll just effectively cut the amount of money that people are making, which is part of the scarcity goal.
Yeah, I'm with my quick read on this, and obviously I'm happy to be wrong, right? My quick read is, which is probably something Hedliner is alluding to, is that more people are going to go to these umbrellas because there's going to be guaranteed safety there, right? So if you go to frat space, which is probably the most heavily ratted areas right now, if you go in there, there's a fleet that'll make sure you don't get out alive. Just a standing fleet that'll drop on everything.
RIP Giannis times 3.
Exactly.
There are a lot of...
So I think people are going to be drawn. Sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But I think people are going to be drawn to going more towards those areas because there's safety in numbers, and those groups have the infrastructure set up to protect the ESS as much as possible. Whereas if you kind of go out into your Wild West, you might not be able to save your ESS from invaders.
Yeah, and see, I'm all for reducing the amount of income people can make safely, but yeah, I mean, it just seems a shame that it's not going to like force people out from under the umbrella.
Well, I think they tried to make null less safe when they tried blackout and people rejected it. So now they're saying, okay, now we're not going to do that, but you have the choice of being less safe and making more money, or we're cutting your money.
And I think that's right. I think that maybe they need to make it even more, like they need to make the cut even more.
And they can, because these are variables, right? So right now it's starting out with as low as 30 if everybody's in the same system doing the work or whatever, or you have multiple alts, and then it's as much as 150, but they can change that to 10, 15%. Like they can really drive that way down so it becomes not a great idea to do it in the safety of your own system.
Because this is one of the things that's bugged me about nullsec for a long time, is that like nullsec has shrunk and expanded based on primarily jump ranges for a long time, right? You know, it used to be very small because we had long jump ranges and no fatigue, and then it became much bigger because you couldn't get places as quickly as you could, and then wormholes came and they were good and you could project further, and then they changed that, and it's always fluctuated between being a big and small expense. But I think like there's so much, you look at the nullsec regions and there's so much space which is just not used. And on paper, fairly good space. And it's just like, I feel like this was a great opportunity for them to force people to spread out a little bit more, which would in turn hopefully breed that more kind of like small to mid-scale PvP conflict kind of stuff. But
I think it's the kind of thing that can be tweaked based on how effective it is at doing that. So like if it's not effective at doing that, maybe they can turn it up and maybe force people out, but
that would be good, right? Surely, like spreading people out, making more space more populated would be good. Because you look back, you don't have to look back that far in recent history to see alliances holding multiple regions and one of them being used for anything, right?
Yeah, well, you know, again, they can tweak this thing to say 10% if you're all piled into the same system, but 300% if you're going out to some other system. Except that I think you need PvP in order to get that system higher, which is kind of funny because I think if you remember in the middle of fleet, sometimes people would go ratting. Do you guys remember that activity?
Yeah. Usually those people that I find doing that got kicked.
Anyway, So I wonder if like there's a bunch of PvP, if all of a sudden everybody will say like, I'm going to go ratting. I'll be back in a few minutes. Excuse me. You know, they creep out, but who knows?
I think what's more likely to happen is people will try and game the system by self-destructing ships or killing their own ships there to build that multiplier up.
See, and that's the thing. That's what I thought. And that it just makes it too easy again, right? Like
well, I think if they go on value, doesn't that negate the...
As long as they make it so the value that gets killed has to be more than what they're going to make.
Yeah, you can lose $1 billion in order to make 900 million, but it doesn't make any sense to do that. If it's your stuff you're sacrificing, you want to sacrifice somebody else's stuff.
And then you factor in insurance into stuff like that as well. And
yeah, but it depends on exactly what the numbers end up being.
I don't know. I just think I hoped when I saw this like sketched out on paper that it would be. It would be like the impetus for like spreading people out and, meaning that nullsec populations weren't as concentrated as they were before. Because if you look at pre-war Delve, right, it was a bit of a joke, really, right? You could be 5 or 6 guys, 10 guys, or whatever, roaming through, and there's not a lot you can do because of the geography and, everyone's in one place. They're all generally within one defensive perimeter, and there's no incentive for going elsewhere apart from not having to worry about if someone's in the next haven.
I think there's a lot of like groups that are like, don't ever PvP like ratting because you're encourage ratters, and there's like a culture around like kind of risk aversion that won't ever really go away until something really, really major happens. And I don't know if like stuff like Zkill and all those intel tools have to do with it. Maybe people would be less inclined to worry about stuff like spreading out if there like wasn't a record of like when you screwed up. But that's really not something that I think
Vily,
we're gonna know.
What do
if
you
it's gonna be
think, Vily?
effective.
let me drag Vily in here. He's on CSM. I don't know what he can say.
But he also has an alliance with a much bigger player base than, say, myself or Elise or anyone else, and who have members who need to live off the space that they have. So,
Do I like the changes? I'm neutral. I think the changes are good for the game as a whole. I think they're going to represent additional hardship for my guys. They're going to be they're going to force them to fight for their space a little more. It's going to make it so that your space is slightly less valuable, and it's in all likelihood it's going to change the way Sovnol is held in general. You can no longer condense into this tiny little pocket of space and set up one singular umbrella and rely on that to feed your entire force. You are now in a situation where you're going to either have to have multiple umbrellas or you're going to have to rotate your crops to some degree. And the to reach that critical mass for an umbrella strength, that's a tricky proposition, and I don't know how it's all going to work out in the end. But I definitely think that the system we had before, where the best strategy was to pack 20,000 people under one highly condensed umbrella, was bad. And I think the fact that if your Gila bot is in a system and a router comes in, your best strategy is to warp out and log off, doesn't help anyone, right? And now if you have no, like, everybody talks about how much botting goes on in the drone regions, but anybody who's actually roamed in frat space knows that it's not exactly quote unquote bots that are showing up like, oh, you dropped 100-man bomber gang in fleet. Well, guess what? There's going to be 10 broadswords, 10 lachesis, 10 whatever Barghest or something trying to get on top of you, plus 100 Munins within like 10 minutes. Like, those aren't bots, those are people, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other regions are not anywhere near as hyper effective at defending the region, and they don't have to be because there's no incentive to do so. And in my opinion, I think this will make the 0-0 ecosystem much more dynamic and perhaps much more interesting. I think it might also create a negative feedback where you are much more incentivized to go directly at anybody invading in your space, any roaming gang, etc. You just go hard at them right away. But no matter what it is, I'm pretty confident it'll be more dynamic than the system we currently have.
Yeah, I would echo that as well, because like I look at the time where 2018, 2019, where we invested a lot of time, Vily, in getting back ways into, say, Esoteria with our Stuka fleets, right? 6-7 hours of work would go into getting back to down the bottom part of Esoteria to catch people in those sort of back end systems with our fleets, to which you guys could respond in a matter of minutes, right? And we would have to play it flawlessly and hope for a little bit of luck and a bit of sort of inertia on your side to kill 3 or 4 Rorquals and then extract intact. And where you have systems which, like, I used to do some money making in a system called 30-T5G D5G in Tenal, right? Which could support 30 individual people with multiple accounts running Rorquals, VNIs, whatever, doing anomalies, doing ore anomalies. I mean, if we move even some way away from that, I think that's a good thing.
Well, it's important to remember there used to be tons and tons of drama over system control and over farming when all you really had was the belts and the odd anom, right? And when they brought in basically the infinite anoms, it changed the dynamic of the game so much in terms of what you could extract resource-wise from a system. And I don't know if the current system is worse than that. I think it's probably better that we had more resources to draw upon, but just the general way in the general amount of resources that a system had to be extracted, I think it went so insanely into the moon like level that anything is better than that to a degree.
I will say some things to note, right? When CCP were chatting about it, CCP Psych and CCP Rotati, they were very quick to point out, we can iterate this, we can change the little widgets that affect the DPS very easily, and they can do this on like a day-to-day basis if they really wanted to. But most importantly, number two, is that this isn't the answer to solve every problem. This is, again, just more of the groundwork which they intend to build off of. And they hinted at like iHub specialization. So you can decide per system via the iHub, potentially in the future, what you want to spawn in that system. Do you want anoms? Do you want trit? Do you want spod? Like, you get to choose, you get to mess with your own system and decide with the trade-offs what happens where. So that's something into the future, and this is part of the framework that gets us there.
I think that's right to a certain extent, but at the same time, I feel like I don't think you should be able to have that much, it shouldn't be that customizable, like if that's even a word, like you shouldn't be able to gear your space to a certain extent. I feel like you should, like, space should be space, and you should take it for what it's worth, rather than being able to take any old space and decide, I want this much out of it.
Well, I do think that the level of like granularity that you'll be able to decide for your space, I think that's still very much a TBD. Like, we're not sure exactly where, or rather CCP is not sure exactly where they're going to go with this. But that's just one possibility.
I like the idea of them, spreading essential resources that are used for a great many things far and wide, and, people having to go and get them if they need them, right? I think that,
like Vikings, trade or war or raid.
Yes, exactly, right? And, even if that means it's not as dynamic as they might like, that's a great conflict driver, right? Rather than them having to...
This works on two ends, right? Because pirates will say, hey, let's go get rich because these guys are putting, a portion of their winnings into this box. Let's go steal that. That's for us. But places like Fraternity Space and OASA, they're going to love that because they need people to come into that space so they can PvP them in order to maintain their density in a better way. Because the dynamic is going to be pushing it down, saying too many people in here, this is going down your profitability. But if you PvP, you can reverse that trend and make it go up. And so there's a balance there. So there's incentives on both sides to engage with one another.
But that's not the only thing happening, and obviously we can continue. We can speculate for hours on the implications of this, but we'll see what happens on Tuesday. The players are very good at developing the best strategies pretty quickly. But also coming out on Tuesday is their VAT Out of Hell update, which is an update graphically and a little bit design-wise to the Supercarriers. And I'll just go through it real quick just so people can know what we're talking about, then ask Hedliner and Vily, who have a lot more experience flying these things, like what this might mean. Number one, the ship models themselves are going to get much bigger. So they're going to be a lot more graphically stunning, I guess. The Wyvern and Aeon are going to get boosted as well. Right now they play second fiddle a lot in terms of DPS. So their fighter damage is going to get increased to, I think, 7.5%. Heavy fighter HP is also going to go up. Light fighter speed and light fighter signature are going to get tweaked, right? So they're bigger and slower, easier to swap down. And the Supercarrier ship maintenance bay is going to be doubled on all Supercarriers. So you're talking about 5 million cubic meters, which is 11 battleships or so.
So does that mean that they'll be the same size as Titans, or are Titans getting a boost as well?
Titans are not getting a boost.
So they'll be the same size?
Well, I mean, Titans might be getting a boost, but they didn't say it, so...
They will be closer to the same size.
Okay.
Wow.
Titans are still significantly larger than Supers, is my understanding.
I think this is really interesting because, like, one thing that we've seen I'll tie this back because it's kind of my thing. tie it back to the war that we're fighting right now, we've seen that of the super capital type combat that we had, like supercarriers have played a massive part in this war. And that's really interesting because I think, they're expanding the capabilities of those. And before now, at least in our experience, supercarriers played a sort of ancillary role to Titans for a long time when they had Hore guns, and you've always had the targeted DDs when before bosuns were changed to the way they are now, where they're not as effective against sub capitals. I think this is really interesting to see, like, to further expand the role of supercarriers, which we've seen without these changes already coming back to the forefront.
Yeah, there's also a practical role for scale, right? Like the model is bigger, your smart bomb range changes. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I mean that is true.
Any other weaponry that works that way, or
I think Hores used to work that way, right? Vily might know, but I think the reason that Hores on Titans were as effective as they were is because of the size of the model as
Correct.
well.
It played a large effect in the way Titan Hawes tracked. I mean, like, the fact that supercarriers get a slightly larger smart bomb is nice, but it really doesn't change anything. The biggest change, actually, it's actually a major negative, because traditionally when you jumped in a group of supercarriers, you knew they weren't going to bump because they're so small. But now that they're bigger, they're much more of a bumping threat than they have been historically. And when goons tried their big boson trap, it wouldn't even have worked now with the new size things, because the supers will bump so much off each other that the majority of them won't be where they land.
Didn't they recently make the Aeon smaller as well?
So
bigger than smaller.
Did I miss that? Like, my Aeon's in asset safety, so I haven't checked. But...
Well, what happened was that the Aeon appeared twice as big as before, and people were like, "Wow, that's awesome!" And they're like, CCP was like, "Oops, let's fix that," and they fixed it and put it back. So,
and now they're making everything twice the size.
Yeah, probably that got triggered a bit early and got out of the bag.
I cannot comment on what happened.
I think that's cool. Like, I make them bigger. They should,
Is it going to affect their relationship to structures at all? Well, they are more likely to bump off structures too.
Like, the larger you are,
right?
the larger you are, the more likely you're to bump off everything, right? So it means it's harder for you to fit inside a pause force field. It means it's harder for you to jump in. It just changes the dynamics around you, right?
This is I think what you'll see, like, they're more likely to bump off each other. They're more it'll be harder to crowd them onto small, medium-sized structures on Fortizars and Keepstar Sotios, that kind of thing. Probably won't make that big of a difference, but I mean, it's cool nonetheless. I think they should be big anyway. Do you guys remember when the Chimera used to be like smaller than Matterall?
I do, yeah.
It never made sense to me. Like, they should be big.
Yeah.
And one of the neat things as well, before we were talking about doubling in size, the ships themselves, like the models, are doubling in size. But I was talking specifically about the ship maintenance bay, which also doubled in size. So now they match the same as Titans, right? They both have 5 million cubic meters of ships that they can put in there. And the reason that's significant is because there's a new little module that gets to be added potentially to these supercarriers called the Tactical Capsuleer Recloner, right? So you can, if you're in a capsule, you can use this thing and materialize in one of the ships that's in the ship maintenance bay of a fleet mate's super. So if you die in, say, a Raven, instead of having to go back home, reship, bridge back in, you could just be like, yo, click, roof, and you're suddenly in a Raven. Or more likely, you're in something that kill dictors, or that can light a cyno, stuff like that.
It's kind of taking it back to the way that motherships back in the day used to be, right? With the Clone Vat Bay, you could, so one thing we used to do way before I was in Pandemic Legion, we had one dude with a Nyx, and he parked it in Immensia, and we would clone to it, get in our roaming ships, go around the constellation, kill some dudes, and come back. I liken it to that, right? It's like using them as a source of getting back into your fight or getting to a fight quicker.
Yeah, there's lots of neat little implications for this, right? So if you're in a big super fleet, then you can reship faster, right? But now if you're maybe a medium or smaller size group, you can really have like a little mini floating base where you can reship out of if you want to go like kill someone, or if you want to like do a small scale invasion of someone. They're strategically a little bit more significant in smaller numbers.
You have to be in the same fleet as the mothership, and you have to be in the same system in order for it to work. And you also have to take a certain booster, right?
Yeah.
The nano heuristic clone mapper or whatever. It's got a cool name.
But you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember that, if you guys have seen it, that video of Starfleet Commander when he was soloing in his Revenant and he would like kill his main on purpose and then go back to his Revenant and get like another Dicta out of the ship maintenance bay and then go back and continue tackling stuff that was warping in on the things that he was killing? It reminds me of that. And if it's anything like that, I think it'll be super cool.
This has no relationship to, remember, ghost writing? This has nothing to do with that, does it?
It's in a similar vein though, right? You know, you can still, I mean, ghost writing, you would jump out of the ship and you would into something else that you launched, but it's all similar kind of using the ships to project your stuff further.
Imagine somebody fails ghost writing in a super and like doesn't lock it, and somebody steals the super.
It runs off with it and the ship's inside.
That doesn't work anymore because you can always get back in the ship if it belongs to you.
Right, but like if somebody else jumps into the ship.
Before
like, I saw somebody. I was at war. Like a year ago, we were fighting some war targets, and there's a war target Orca. Somebody tackled them. They ejected a Stratios and jumped into the Stratios and killed my corp mate's Kikimora, and they just jumped in the Orca. The Stratios shot the Orca. Orca jumped the gate and left.
Well, that's happened.
They stole the Orca. It was hilarious.
So we used to ghost ride a lot back in the day, and that's happened a couple of times to me. I think it's happened to you, Elise, as well. Like, you know,
definitely.
Just make sure you lock your own ship when you ghost ride. Is the thing. Right.
You know, mistakes have been made with people taking other people's ship.
Nobody ever talked about those mistakes. It sounded so cool. You literally were cowboys, right? You'd be riding up, lassoing your horse to hold it in place while you did combat with the ship.
And that was a cool mechanic. I mean, for me, it never made much sense because if it was me, I was being dropped by someone who was ghost riding, I would just immediately start killing the things that they jumped out of. But no one ever seemed to do that to us. But no, it's a cool mechanic, and it reminds me of that a little bit in that you can get people coming back off one ship into what they need. I think you'll see people doing it with tackle ships a lot, or like role critical ships, like, you know, things that maybe if you need extra energy neutralizers or like interdictors, heavy interdictors, stuff like that, I think is what you'll see it used for a lot.
There's a lot of neat implications, and there could be a very high like organizational cap to it, or it could just be a fun meme that people do like once a year or something. It's kind of hard to tell.
Just novelty.
I think I can see definite good uses for it. It's like a good version of that escape bay bullshit that they put in.
Right. That's what I was going to say. The frigate inside the battleship was a smaller version of this, a little different, but that didn't really get used very much, did it?
No, I think for two reasons. One, it's like, you know, if you've lost your battleship and you eject into, say, an assault frigate or something, there's a very good chance that you'll be ineffective or probably die quite quickly afterwards anyway. So you're just doubling down on what you're going to lose. But also, a lot of the time, people forget to put stuff in their escape bay anyway.
So
that's not actually true, though. Like we use Nightmare fleets extensively, right? And we always make sure that everybody in a Nightmare has Jaguars or Kurans kind of loaded up. So if you're losing Nightmares, then your lodge number is increasing or your hard tackle is increasing, right? Like, and it usually is a beneficial thing to have. And same with us now using TFIs and Tempest, where it's much the same. Like, you either get a nice heavy tackle ship after you die, or you get another lodge ship. And both situations, it makes a difference. It helps the fleet continue operating afterwards. It's taken a long time for us to get used to actually calling it and making sure people bring something in the frigate escape bay, but it's a super useful tool to have.
It's an amazingly useful tool to have, especially, well, maybe not especially, but definitely on the smaller scale stuff as well. So like you said, the Logifrigs are like half a guardian. A deacon is like half a guardian or something like that. And things like Kirins and Kitsunes and even just Griffins or like hardcore tackle punishers are amazing. Especially, I think there's use for it on all scales of fighting, but I can see why some people might want to just get back into something else quicker.
I mean, I see it like it's one of those things that I think is very underutilized because people just forget, or it's not pushed enough at, like, say, a doctrinal level, right? Because we've killed a lot of battleships, which it's quite rare that you actually see someone, like from our experience, you see someone in their escape bay frigate. It's more of a novelty sometimes. Who's like, oh, he's got this in his escape bay. So I was thinking, like, from our perspective, when we're fighting on those Keepstars, I mean, we probably wouldn't want a frigate in the escape bay. We'd rather someone just got capsule killed back and bridged back in another rock, for example. But we didn't load frigates into the escape bay at all.
Well, yeah, that depends on context. But there are definitely contexts where it's like a valid choice to just, you want to die and get back in a battleship faster. But there's a lot of fights that can be swung by the frigates in the escape bay.
But I mean, I guess we haven't seen a lot of that, I guess, because battleships have not been as widely used as they were in the past.
I've definitely seen it on like smaller scales.
Yeah, it seems like it would be more useful.
The first few times it happened to me, I was like getting ready to warp out my pod. I'm like, wait, I'm a retribution, right? It's like, no, keep fighting it. Right, just keep calling targets.
All right, we have one last section to take on real quick. Elise, tell us about Event Alliance Open.
So this is actually really exciting news. As many people know, and probably most people here besides me don't care too much about, the Alliance tournament was put on an indefinite hiatus last year or the year before. I don't remember when. It's been a dark time. So CCP haven't necessarily brought it back. However, Event, the player-run production group that ran the previous two Alliance tournaments, from a production level at least, came to CCP earlier this year and said, hey, we want to do something Alliance tournament like. What support can we get from you? A proposal was made by RJ, Ithaca Hawk, myself, and a few others. And we came up to this thing that we have since called the Event Alliance Open, which is the cultural successor in a way to the Alliance tournament. Very similar format. There's 32 teams that signed up a few months ago. We had Ithaca Hawk on the show to talk about it, along with Bay RJ, who designed a lot of the tournament. So all those guys have signed up. They've been doing their practicing already. The tournament itself is getting very close to happening. It actually starts next week. It's going to be run over the course of 2 weekends. So it's a very compact type thing. Very action-packed and dense, I should say, not compact. Yesterday, there was a nice little showcase match between 10 CCPers who formed their own team, going up against a few Event commentators, analysts, and people who help organize Reload, Sutonia, Dreckless, Ithaca Hawk, Jose Zampano. I think he captained the team. So
who won that, by the way?
It was a best of 5 series, and CCP almost won, but they lost in 5. And actually quite fantastic style. They ended up stealing their opponent's team after they beat them. They stole their fleet comp, more or less, made some improvements, and then tried to beat them with it, but didn't quite work out. I think a lot of people thought it would be a sweep. People were like, oh, CCPers, these guys don't know how to play their own game. But they were surprisingly competitive. A lot of these guys and girls that were on the team. So we had CCP Aurora.
Who captained the team?
CCP Aurora captained the CCP team. She's formerly an EVE player. She also captained the Brave Newbies team in the actual Alliance tournament before as a player. So she has some tournament chops. CCP Fozzie was there, who won a gold medal while he was a player as well. CCP Convict was there, CCP Paragon, CCP Paradox, CCP Spider. I had the list somewhere. CCP Deadlift, CCP Bartender, and I'm sure I'm missing someone, and apologies, but CCP Alpha, who was kind of man of the match, really, in a lot of matches.
And it's good that these guys are now giving EVE players a bit more of a closer run for their money, though, right? That's positive.
Yeah. So these guys definitely, there were no saps, right? They really strongly contested. It really flew well, and at least 4 of the matches they outpiloted the opponent's team. So they were.
Yeah, at least they didn't show up in like Minmatar Rush or something like it's 2000 late, hoping for the best.
Yeah. Oddly enough, they did show up in Minmatar Rush and won, but whatever. And they won with that one. But so more about the tournament. The tournament does have $1 trillion prizes or so. It will be held next weekend and the weekend after that on the EVE channel. There's some really, really fun matches potentially lined up. I'll throw some links in the comments and links in the chat as well as we get a little bit closer. But Test and Goons have a potential match where they can face each other in the semifinals, I believe, the way it works out.
Big decider of the war, maybe.
Yeah. Just to have the gladiators fight it out for the rest of the war.
There's also
win that easily. Good guys always win.
There's also a really neat rule change. There's actually several rule changes that I'll spare a lot of people on because you guys probably are not interested in the nitty gritty. But one of the cool things is in previous years, the Alliance tournament had this thing called the flagship rule, where you could have a battleship and put almost unrestricted modules on it. So you could have more or less everyone chose a Balgorn with Toby Webbs if they could afford it and Kelm's Newts. So there would be like these insane things that could avoid bans. And when the flagship died, you could no longer field it. We didn't really like that rule too much, so we iterated on it. Put in what we now call the wild card rule, where every team can choose a wild card, which is either a unique cruiser or 2 unique frigates that they can field at any single match that they want with like 15 minutes notice. They can decide to field it, and it does, I believe it circumvents bans as well.
When you say unique, what do you mean? Like
Adrestia, Malice, Imp, Utu, like those types of things.
Okay, so if anyone would like to purchase one of those for their participation in this tournament, please let me know.
So that would generally be a big like limiting factor for people. However, this tournament is being run on Thunderdome, so every single team that chose their wild card, and all 32 teams chose a wild card, they were given their unique ships as well. So every single team can field, if they want, at least in one match, a double Malice if they chose, Etana, Rabisu if they had chosen that, and the wild cards do get refreshed in the finals. So there will be unique ships exploding, maybe a little bit less interesting because it's not going to be with a 400 billion price tag, but everyone will have the same level of access to it.
Wait, what? It's not for real?
I mean, it's for real, yeah.
Where do these ships come from?
It's not
they get created from Thunderdome magic.
What?
But Hedliner, you'll be happy because people will see these ships in action. They'll be I want one of those. I'll want one of those. I will buy one from Hedliner, and I could be fancy.
On Tranquility for real. What? Sorry, no, come on. The stakes should be real, not make believe.
That was our first option, right? That's something that we wanted, but hosting this thing on Tranquility was not an option.
Why not?
Maybe in the future.
It's not supposed to be doing
after this first one.
What? Oh yeah, that's one thing.
Because this entire tournament is CCP supports us or supports EVE very, very well, but from the refs and everything from the bottom up, it is being done by players, by EVE staff.
Shame on you, Elise.
So they're the ones that are like moving people in the system, checking fits and stuff like that.
If somebody can't third party, it's not for real anyway.
The stake should be real. The stake should be absolutely for real.
Well, there is.
I should use the proving grounds for the.
However, how else would like wannabe wigs like Danker 1001 claim to fame? You know,
there is a buy-in, right? So if
they
you
weren't losing ships that they didn't own for real on Tranquility.
I mean, it amounts to the same thing, right?
or like you, for example, Elise, boundary violating in ships that you don't own.
Or losing to our peers.
But the loss, the ships are temporary. The losses are eternal.
But if you can't third party a fight, it's not real anyway. So nothing that happened in PE1 TAC R1 was real.
Talk about missing the mark, Elise. Come on.
Either way, even though Hedliner is poo-pooing it, he is a known hater of Alliance tournaments.
Preach, brother.
But everyone else that loves them, you guys should tune in next week. There will also be prizes for viewers.
What I would say is I think that they are a great demonstration of piloting skill and on-the-fly tactics and, like the ultimate EVE Online poker game. I would say that's what the Alliance tournament was.
They used to be really good recruiting tools as well, right? Like you would see a team do really well and you'd be like, I want to join them.
I mean, I didn't find myself wanting to join the Star Fraction after they beat Band of Brothers Matterall, but I mean...
Well, there's some exceptions. That was a fluke, but...
I don't think that was a fluke.
It definitely was a fluke. It was.
I wanted to join RUR after
our peers are OP.
Alliance Tournament 7. I found out they were Romanian, so I couldn't talk to them. So
I will say membership to PL increased every summer after we won an Alliance tournament, or rather applications increased.
That just happened to coincide with your stewardship of Pandemic Legion as well, didn't it?
into greatness. Yep, I
convenient.
All right,
I'm going to throw while we wrap this up. I'm going to throw the matches into Twitch chat so you guys can see. There are some real good crackers there that I think people will like. We Form Volta plays in their first match against Vidra Reloaded. So it's two former Alliance Tournament winning teams going head to head. One gets sent to the elimination bracket, colloquially known as the losers bracket. So someone's going to be a loser there.
Didn't one of them used to cheat though?
No. You're thinking of, well,
Hydra or Warlord.
They changed their name a lot.
There is a bit of an asterisk on the Vidra team and the Hydra team. And the Warlords of the Deep team.
Warlords of the Deep.
What does it say in the asterisk?
Camel.
Collusion.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, what I would say, and I know I've been a bit bleak on this, is that I think it is a good thing for showcasing piloting skill and tactics and generating some of that esports vibe around the game, which is good if it attracts new players, provided they end up in nullsec.
We need more people in nullsec, thanks.
Wow.
You guys can.
That's a whole different discussion.
All right. Is that it, Elise?
Yeah, you should watch it. It'll be fun. You can bet on matches as well and win prizes, which was kind of a mainstay of
the Alliance tournament
before.
Did you assemble a Pandemic Legion team to go in here?
There is no Pandemic Legion team. No one wanted to run it. They were too scared to lose. They legitimately were too scared to lose. There's no NC Dot team as well.
When you've won 5 of them, I mean, what have you got to prove?
That is true.
What did you say about gambling there? You can bet? How's that?
So it's not like the Eve bet style where you can throw money on the table, but you can bet the outcome of each match. You go on to the Eve NT website, do some really cool stuff. Go click, I want this. Oh, I think this guy's going to win. And then from the pool of people who predicted correctly, there are prizes given out.
All right, got it.
So it's betting with extra steps and legal.
For now.
All right, one last thing. Elise, tell us about your hat. Why are you wearing that hat?
Oh, yeah. So people have been talking about my oranges. Yeah, orange was a very bad color to choose. I understand that. One of the reasons I'm wearing it is because the Florida Gators played their rivals, the Georgia Bulldogs, yesterday and won in very convincing fashion. So Florida Gators and orange and blue are the colors of the school. The other school that I have to root for is atrocious at all sports. So, go Gators.
Right.
What sport did they play?
They played college football.
I'm glad you don't know that, Arsia. It makes me feel better about you.
There's also an important note that this is not why I'm wearing these colors.
Don't watch college football. But go ahead.
But another thing, and while I'm glad that Hedliner was here today, is because his 30th birthday is coming up.
What?
He's going to join me in Boomerhood soon. Boomers are the over 30s.
I'm offended by this, Elise. I am not a boomer. All right.
The worst thing about this is that I started playing EVE when I was 14 years old. So
More than half his life has been devoted to this wonderful, wonderful hobby. He has not wasted a single day.
Yeah.
I've wasted thousands of days. Thanks for reminding me. Sorry, I wouldn't change it for the world. And Vily's like 10 years older than me at least, so.
Not 10, but long enough to know that I perhaps wish I would have chosen a different hobby when I was, 18.
Well, happy birthday, you guys. Amazing. You're only 30.
For my sins, Matterall, for my sins.
Yeah. Drink up.
I would say it's aged me terribly.
All right. Well, thanks very much for coming on. Vily, for jumping on there at the last second. Hedliner, for hosting. Thank you. Very, very well done. Our engineer, MacCloud, thank you for putting up the videos. And of course, Elise and Arsia, thank you guys for providing great content. If you want to see more Talking in Stations, we have a show every day. You can check those out on our YouTube. That's youtube.com/talkinginstations. Or you can go now to talkinginstations.com, where we have a library of all our podcasts. If you put in Hedliner's name in the search engine, you'll find all the shows that have Hedliner or Vily or Cloaking or Triglavian. So you can actually use it as something to zero in on the content you actually want, because we've been going for 4 years now.
Or filter out the content you don't want.
Yeah. All right. So thanks very much.
And, look at all our correct predictions as well.
Yeah, totally hold us accountable to like what we said is going to happen.
Yeah, I remember the one where you were like, the Stargates are all going to disappear.
All right. And if you like Eve Echoes right now, go to Talking in Stations on YouTube, and you can see a live show with Fish, who's interviewing a panel of people who created the biggest battle in Eve Echoes so far. I think it was 1,300 people. So check that out right now, and we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.